Yo, we step up in the scene, check your engine is clean. DPF Guys got your ride smoking green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel uphold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold. It's like this, we clean up your flow. Now your engine is gliding, it's time to hit the road.
Oh, wait a second. There we go. Hey, it was a black screen. I wasn't sure what was going on. Look at this. It is Sunday, December 22nd, 2024. Hang on a second. I got to warm my bones here a little bit. That's good. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in wherever you might be tuning in from. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook or anywhere else right now, like Twitch or LinkedIn, whatever, jump over to youtube.com/DPF Guys so you don't miss any of our content. And if you're catching this someplace else other than YouTube, head to youtube.com and do what I just said. Okay, I'm just going to quick check my levels here and everything else, make sure I'm not too loud, too soft, too handsome. Well, of course, that's hard not to do. So anyway, I'm James from DPF Guys, your go-to for diesel after treatment services. Whether you're an owner-operator with just one truck, or you manage a fleet, big fleet, small fleet, in-between fleet, or run a repair shop or truck dealership, we've got the expertise to keep you running clean and compliant. We handle everything with the diesel engine, from your light and medium-duty pickup trucks, to passenger vehicles, to RVs, off-road equipment like tractors, skid steers, and even the stuff that doesn't move. Generators, wood chippers, etc. So I'd like to say, if it has a DPF, we've got you covered. Call or text us at 404-999-1361. Again, that's 404-999-1361. Feel free to call or text. We're here to help you out and give you some more info. Got questions? Drop them in the chat, wherever that might be. I'll answer live during our session, or I'll pick these up at some point. We do monitor all of these chat boxes. Sometimes we miss them a little bit. So, if you need something, and you want us to talk, want to talk to us a little more urgently, call or text. Text is preferred, 404-999-1361. Important disclaimer. While I'm a pretty smart guy and I have the best intentions, I've got to say, please consult your mechanic for specific issues, because I hate to steer you wrong. Pricing that's discussed here is for reference and entertainment only, and not to be considered an unofficial quote. I don't want somebody to watch this video 25 years from now and say, wait a second, you said that it was only $200 and now it's $25,000, depending upon how inflation turns out. So let's get busy with this. And we do have 10 questions. These came in from a variety of sources, mostly TikTok. Which reminds me, of course, I do want you to follow me on YouTube, because who knows what's going to happen with TikTok. But if you are a TikToker and want to see kind of cool and interesting stuff that's diesel related, please go over to TikTok, look for DPF Guys, and follow us over there. We do get a lot of good questions over there, have some great people following us. But just in case TikTok does go bye-bye, let's make sure that you follow us on youtube.com/DPF Guys. Okay, let's go to question number 1. What do we have here? All right, this is from ZJ Maz, right off of TikTok, like I said. Man, I get this question a lot. Is there a difference between platinum and regular DEF? I'm genuinely curious myself, pending the results of this test. I'm also curious about your opinion on DEF fuel additives. Let's get to it. So, in order to answer this question, I went to Home Depot and picked up a 2.5 gallon container of regular peak DEF and a container of platinum peak DEF. The platinum DEF was $6 more than the regular DEF. I think I paid 16 and change for the regular DEF and 22 and change for the platinum DEF. And if you do all your gazintas on that, that's about a 31% difference in price between the two formulations. And which is a pretty substantial difference. So I did a couple of redneck science experiments to see if there was a difference. In one test, I put The equivalent, I put 200 milliliters of each solution in kind of a aluminum roasting pan, and just let them sit out and allowed them to evaporate at room temperature to see what happens, to kind of simulate what happens to the death if it's spilled on your driveway or on your truck's fairing or anything like that. It took about 8 hours or so for everything to completely evaporate, and well, guess what happened? They both crystallized. There was a difference between the crystallization between the two. The crystals in the platinum DEF were definitely flakier. There's a video on this, and I'm doing a longer video on YouTube, so that's why you want to subscribe to youtube.com/DPF Guys. So when these longer, more produced videos make it there, you'll see them. But the platinum DEF crystals were flakier. Kind of hard to describe, but you ever see ice crystals that just, like really just kind of poof up, almost like, like snowflakes? That's what it looked like. They were much flakier, they're more dimensional, they're much more brittle, and they also appeared to grow further up the sides of the aluminum container that I had the DEF in. So once, in the regular DEF still crystallized as well, but it didn't have that three-dimensional, it kind of was more flat. Just like if you're going to look at the frost on the inside of your freezer, it's normally, some of it might be this kind of flaky, growing crystallization. Other stuff, the other ice that when you defrost your freezer is more kind of like a thick coating, and the crystallized DEF for the regular DEF was more that less dimensional, more kind of thick stuff. And the video really gets into this, so I look forward to posting that for you. And so once everything was evaporated and fully crystallized, I did flush both pans with an equal amount of warm water, and guess what? Both the platinum and regular DEF crystals dissolved equally, instantly, completely, and I tested the remainder of the solution, and it came out to, for both of them, 15% urea using my handy dandy refractometer. Let me take a look if I still have it behind me. Hold on. This is the refractometer I used. I highly recommend that everybody keeps one of these in their glove box. If you don't have one, we do sell them for $15. You're gonna get sick of me saying this, but text or call us, text us and say, hey, I'd like a DEF refractometer, and we will get one ordered for you. So other than a slightly different crystalline structure, there was no major difference between platinum DEF and regular DEF. I didn't stop there. I kept my white lab coat on, and the next experiment I did was to put 200 milliliters of platinum and regular DEF separately, 200 milliliters of each, in two different Pyrex containers, beakers, whatever you want to call them. And guess what I did? I threw them in my oven, in my kitchen. Luckily, my wife tolerates me, and ran them at what I would kind of consider a typical exhaust, further down the range, down the exhaust stream temps, 400 or 500 degrees. And basically, I just used the hot oven to bake the liquid out, leaving behind the crystallized urea, crystallized DEF, I guess you call it. And guess what? The initial experience, the first experiment we did in the two roaster pans, where we let them evaporate at room temperature, there was definitely a difference in the physical characteristics of the crystals. But when we crystallized them under temperature, they both crystallized identically. I mean, you couldn't tell them apart. Luckily I had labeled the jars, otherwise it would tip. It created kind of a hard white substance that did not dissolve in warm or hot water. Now, this is the kind of DEF buildup that does cause trouble in your system. It doesn't really matter if you've got DEF crystals on the outside of your DEF tank or whatever. That just washes off with water. Doesn't hurt anything, but this crystallization of DEF that might pool up or build up in your decomposition chamber or your SCR does form a different crystal. It's actually, I had it looked at and kind of lightly tested by a friend of mine at Emory, and they suggested that it was an ammonia salt that's left over. But they both left the exact same thing, and warm water and boiling hot water didn't touch it, unlike the buildup of the DEF crystals. So in this case, there was zero difference. And this is, like I said, what you'd see in your SCR, your DEF doser or injector, and your decomposition or mixing chamber is the kind of DEF you'd see built up. Last, and definitely not least, I took regular and platinum DEF and agitated them. And by agitation, meaning, again, in my kitchen, I put, I don't know if it was 100 milliliters or 200 milliliters. I think it was 200 milliliters of each DEF, dumped it in the blender, and ran the blender to really spool it up, really stir it. And what happened with, again, there's a video on this as well on TikTok. I need to put it on YouTube, but jump over to TikTok. You can see this video. The regular DEF did foam a bit when it was being agitated, but I think that would happen with almost any fluid, any liquid. But the foaming just poof went away instantly once the blender was turned off and the agitation stopped. The platinum DEF, however, foamed up like soap and stayed foamy for a long period of time, even after the agitation stopped. So I believe the only difference between platinum and regular DEF is that platinum DEF has just a smidge, a tiny amount, a drop or two maybe, of surfactant. And what's a surfactant? It's simply soap. And surfactant stands for surface something. And what it does, God, my brain's melting. But it basically, in the DEF, it would change the nucleation properties of the liquid to cause crystals to form differently. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The crystals were different. And it creates a kind of a fluffier crystallization, but it still crystallizes. It didn't have any impact at all about that with the high temperature crystallization, which is really the one you worry about. Survey says, my very unscientific conclusion is that platinum DEF doesn't have any real world benefit. And you're paying 30% more for a product that doesn't hurt anything, but I do not believe helps either. Now, where platinum DEF might hurt you is not so much in the formulation. That's not going to hurt anything. But if you think about the fact that it has a higher price, a higher cost, 30% more, at least at Home Depot, what's going to happen? What's going to move faster, logically? The regular DEF. So I suspect that consumers would buy the platinum DEF less often than the regular DEF. So the boxes of platinum DEF are likely older and not as fresh, not turning as frequently as the regular DEF. So you know that fresh matters when it comes to DEF. So my conclusion is don't bother with the platinum DEF and just buy the cheapest and freshest DEF you can find. Also, kind of as a bit of an aside and kind of my speculation and with my thoughts on how retail works, it's all about shelf space, right? And the more shelf space you can take up, the more you can squeeze your competitors out. And I don't know if this is the case or not, but I could see this being the case. This happens a lot with merchandising for soda and for beer and for cereal. And what Peak could tell Home Depot is to say, well, look, you're going to want to stock our DEF. People want to buy it. They're going to come to your store to buy it. And while they're there, they might get 2x4s or, a doorbell or a drill or whatever it might be. But we're not going to sell you just the regular DEF. You have to buy the regular DEF and platinum DEF. And guess what that does? That doubles the amount of shelf space available, that Peak takes up, the Peak brand takes up, and eliminates a slot for a competitor's brand. And I can't imagine Home Depot wanting to waste precious shelf space to say, well, let's have a third brand in here because we want to have a cheaper brand. Well, now Peak has actually served that purpose because they have the more expensive brand, Platinum, and the cheaper brand. But guess what? If you want to spend a little more money, spend 30% more, you're going to need the Platinum stuff. If you want to save a couple of bucks, you're going to buy the regular stuff. But guess what? They both come from Peak. So I think it's kind of a brilliant retail strategy, but I would not buy Platinum DEF thinking that it's going to behave any differently for your truck. If you want to give your truck a treat and and feed it the platinum DEF just because it makes you feel better, by all means do so, but it's not going to make a lick of difference. So DEF is DEF is DEF. Get the freshest and cheapest DEF you can. All right. That's a short answer to a, a long answer to a short question. Okay. And of course, if you have any DEF questions, guess what? 404-999-1361, and we are here for you. Okay, let's go to question number 2. And this is from Blue Boy Edwards from TikTok. So many questions from TikTok. Love you guys. Do you have a good used one on hand for a 2022 Dodge Ram 3500? And just to fill in the details here, by good used one, he's asking about a good used DPF assembly for his 2022 Dodge Ram 3500. Now, what kind of piqued my interest here is, why does he need a new DPF for his 2022? That truck is barely broken in. But, let me get to my answer here. So the answer is yes, we do. And guess what? I'll let you in a little secret here. We do stock a decent amount of used parts, but we don't call them used. They're called Highway Legends, which I love. So the used stock will fluctuate on a daily basis. So what we have today, we may not have tomorrow, and what we have tomorrow, what we don't have today. So, definitely if you're looking for something, make sure you remember our number. Remember our number? Text or call 404-999-1361. So anyway, with this guy, last I checked, we do have several Ram 3500 DPF assemblies in our Highway Legend stock, and would love to help you out. If you or anybody else is looking for a specific DPF and want to see if we have a used one, if not, we'll have, a wonderful selection of really nice aftermarket. But if you're looking for something, if you have a part number, or even more importantly, photos of your current DPF, we can see if we have a match. However, this all being said, I want to get into what I said earlier. I'm curious as to why you're looking to replace your DPF for a 2022 Ram, which is still a pretty new truck and probably still has fairly low miles on it. Your truck is barely broken in, and I wonder if he just needs a cleaning for that DPF and not a replacement. I also wonder how many miles are on this truck, and if the issue is possibly traced back to something else, maybe something really simple like an air filter. If you put a new air filter on this truck, and if you use an aftermarket brand like Fram, as crazy as it might sound, that could really be your issue. The newer light and medium duty trucks like this Ram 3500 are for some reason extremely picky about the fuel air mixture, and extremely picky when it comes to the air filters. And what's funny is, one would think, and back in the good old days, the better your air filter flowed, the better it would work. If you remember being at, AutoZone or O'Reilly's or wherever you might be. And a lot of them had that K&N demo where they'd have, 2 different filters, and then you'd flip a switch, and I think a ping pong ball would go up or something. And you're like, well, yeah, this makes sense to have a K&N filter because it breathes better. But what can happen is these new diesel engines are so perfectly tuned for fuel air mixture that if you actually let too much air in, it messes up the combustion and can cause the engine to run worse and actually produce more soot and plug up your DPF and completely confound the dealer. So if you have a Fram or similar filter, I would say swap it for an OEM filter or possibly a Wix, but I would go OEM, and then have the dealership run a forced regen on your truck, and that may just fix you right up. So I guess, text me or call me at 404-999-1361 and let me know what you find out with this Ram 3500. And let's move on to question number 3. All right, this is from Wardo163, also from TikTok. Good on you guys. I tell you what, if TikTok does get banned, I'm going to be very lonely. And then this is more about platinum DEF. If as advertised, residual should show a difference of about 15-ish percent, scam or no scam. So I don't want to say scam, but if there's a more polite word for scam, I would say that, possibly marketing hype. So, you know, again, in the defense of platinum DEF, it won't hurt anything other than your wallet. But as always, I would just recommend the freshest and cheapest DEF you can find. I'm going to do a video later about how to read the manufacturing dates and lot numbers and everything off of DEF boxes that will help you in the future. But a 31% difference in price is a pretty big deal. It's only $6 more, but they, in my opinion, in today's economy, there are far better ways to spend $6 than on a premium product that's really not any different. So what is DEF? Well, DEF is DEF is DEF. And all DEF is diesel exhaust fluid or diesel emissions fluid, or blue DEF, if you happen to be watching me in Europe, is just exactly 32.5% urea and 67.5% distilled demineralized water, and that is it. And all I can tell you is just make sure it's fresh and clean, you know, fresh and not contaminated. That's really all you're looking for. And yeah, you should have, if you've been listening to me for any amount of time, a DEF refractometer for testing your DEF in the glove box. It is a $15 item that we can sell to you. If you want to order one, text us at 404-999-1361. I'll send you the link where you can place your order. Keep one in your glove box. It can definitely help eliminate the potential of having bad DEF before you go to the dealership and spend a bunch of money doing diagnostics, because you might just have a bad batch of DEF. So if you don't have one of these, you can get one from us for $15. Give us a text or a call, 404-999-1361. I am totally shameless with that phone number, but I want to make sure that you know how to get a hold of me if you desire. Okay, what do we have here? Question number 4 from Andrew Morales, 842, also from TikTok. Going back to my test, and the answer to this is yes, but the question is, does it dissolve the crystals when liquid is poured in? Yes, both platinum and regular DEF crystals dissolve completely and immediately. No difference whatsoever. I use the same amount of hot water to dissolve both, and the water tested exactly 15% urea from both of them right on the nose. That tells me that the amount of urea that was crystallized was exactly the same for both. The crystals just looked differently between the platinum and regular DEF. The platinum DEF was fluffier. I'm not sure if that's a scientific term, or flakier, I guess. And the regular DEF was a bit more solid. So what's my recommendation? Use the freshest and cheapest DEF you can find, and don't worry about platinum DEF unless you just enjoy spending an extra 31% on DEF for some reason. And then in that case, I will sell you ultra platinum DEF, and I'll charge you $50 for 2.5 gallons if it makes you feel better. Yeah, so there you go. No difference. The hot water melted everything down immediately for both. No difference there. The solution read the exact same on the DEF refractometer for both of them. And that is that. All right. Are you ready for question number 5? I am. From Beard Wolfie, also from TikTok. What do you guys do with the soot? Apparently, Beard Wolfie used to drive to the landfill. He would pick up and unload it in a landfill there in California. I'm not sure if he's Northern California, Southern California. I haven't been to California in many years. I'd like to actually take a cruise up to, fly into San Francisco, hang out there for a bit, check out some of the sites, and then drive down Highway 1 to Los Angeles and San Diego. I think that would be fun. What do we do with the soot? I did a video showing the barrel of soot and how long it takes to actually build that soot up, and then the question is, what do we do with it? So first off, the soot is classified as non-hazardous for transportation, meaning it's not radioactive, it's not corrosive, explosive, or any of that other fun stuff that requires placarding. Now, before you get any smart ideas, don't get me wrong. It's totally, absolutely hazardous to breathe. And the unburned hydrocarbon / diesel fuel that makes up a majority of the soot is no bueno in the soil for plants, contrary to what many of you people that love to delete your systems like to tell me. They're like, oh, soot's good for the environment. No, it's not. It's bad for the environment, terrible to breathe, and there's a million ways it's bad to breathe. So, but it's not hazardous. It's not radioactive. It's not flammable. It's not, it's not corrosive. So what do we do with it? We work with a recycler out of Alabama, and they used to actually pay us for the soot, but apparently the market conditions have changed. So now they don't pay us, but they do send us an empty barrel. We fill it up, we secure it. FedEx Ground picks it up, takes it back, complete, chain of custody. It goes and gets recycled. And so the question then I get asked is, what is it recycled into? So this depends entirely on market conditions. The soot will be really turned into any number of things. And it's really used in a surprising number of industries, such as cement manufacturing. Use it as a filler or supplementary material, and cement production makes a stronger and lighter cement. Who knew? Similar to cement, brick and tile production. They will incorporate the soot into clay mixtures for building materials. Also, the soot does have trace amounts of the precious metals that are part of the emissions system, and that's going to be platinum, palladium, and rhodium from the DOC or the diesel oxidation catalyst, and some of that will end in the diesel soot. When the prices for platinum, palladium, and rhodium are high, it's worth the trouble to actually go through the process of extracting those from the soot. Just so you know, when I started, rhodium was $18,000 an ounce, and now it's half that. So they're not investing the time and money into extracting the rhodium. It's not worth it. They're using it for other stuff. So what else? Energy production. They can actually burn the soot as a low-grade fuel source. I don't think they do that with our soot too much, but possibly. Paints and pigments processed into carbon black using coatings and inks. It's used in the rubber and plastic manufacturing industry. Recycled soot is used as a reinforcing filler in tires, believe it or not, and other rubber products. And amazingly enough, coming full circle, environmental applications. It's sometimes engineered into absorbents for oil and filtration systems. Isn't that wild? And lastly, we got industrial catalyst. Recycled ash components can be used to create catalytic materials. And yes, we could send it to the landfill, and Waste Management gave me a quote. They charge about $200 a month to haul our soot to the landfill. But I would rather get it recycled and not have to pay $200 a month to have it brought to the landfill. But we could do that if we wish to do so. But our goal is to keep this ash out of the environment, the soot and ash out of the environment, which we do, and then give it to the recycler, and they can do with it what they will. And it ends up somewhere. I mean, the whole deal is the tires on your truck probably have diesel soot in them as part of its makeup, part of its recipe, which is kind of cool to think about. Okay, moving on. Question number 6. This is from NCR Champ 14, also from TikTok. Thanks for your question. Now, I did a video talking about the soot and talked about, what would be what was in the environment from these trucks back prior to emissions. And, sometimes these questions are really kind of, they're trying to set me up because some people believe, and I've been told this, I don't know the logic behind this, but they'll say, oh no, a deleted truck is actually cleaner than a DPF equipped truck because a deleted truck produces less soot than a truck with a DPF. And I'm like, what? How's that? But so anyway, let's talk about that. So a truck with deleted or no emissions will normally dump between 1 or 2 grams of soot into the atmosphere while it's running. Now, the amount of soot that is actually, pumped in the atmosphere will vary depending upon the truck's load, driving conditions, everything else, but 1 to 2 grams of soot out the stack into the atmosphere per mile of engine hour, or either per mile or equivalent engine hour, is pretty typical. And then let's look at kind of how this all works out. So if you're a truck driver, you're part of a group of very important people, and guess what? Commercial truck drivers travel approximately, it's actually a bit over this, but approximately 300 billion miles, 300 billion with a B, miles per year. So that means that without emissions, or if your emissions were deleted in all those trucks, those semis would be pumping between 300 billion and 600 billion grams of soot. That's between 661 million to over 1.3 billion pounds of soot in the air we breathe every single year. Now, this is just for the over-the-road trucking. This does not include an even greater amount of soot that would be put in the atmosphere from agricultural, tractors and combines, that sort of stuff, and construction equipment, mining vehicles and off-road stuff, graders and dozers and that sort of stuff. This is just the output of soot from trucks. So then the question is, okay, how much soot does a truck with emissions put out? And here is your answer. So current trucks with emission systems reduce soot output usually by 99.9% or greater, even up to 100%. But real world emissions, let's say that's closer to 90% on the low end. So, your typical truck with an emission system, with the DPF, is going to be reducing the amount of soot it puts it in the air. By on the very, very low end, it's reducing it by 90%, and on the typical high end, 99% or greater. So if we use the same numbers and we use the real world range of 90% filtration on a truck that might not be doing the best possible job of capturing the soot, and then 99.9% on the high end of soot capture, you're looking at a worst case scenario of a modern truck putting, ready? 0.05 grams of soot into the air, worst case scenario, per mile driven if it's running dirty, and if the truck is running at the design spec of filtration of 99.9% of filtration efficiency, it will be putting about 0.01 grams of soot into the air every mile driven. Now, these numbers are, so tiny, you need to kind of wrap your head around it. So for sake of comparison, 0.05 grams is the same weight as a grain of salt or a single kind of short human hair. So that's what a typical truck that's even running a bit dirty with emissions puts in the air, compared to 1 to 2 grams of soot per mile. And a truck that's running properly and has a DPF system that's running as designed is going to put, 0.01 grams of soot in the air per mile. And guess what? How much is 0.01 grams? That's the weight of a human eyelash or a speck of pollen. To put it simply, having a DPF on semi-trucks keeps the amount of soot equaling the weight of over 100,000 elephants out of the air we breathe every year. So it's no joke. So those of you who claim that DPF makes truck exhaust actually sootier, I'm sorry to say you're simply incorrect. And if you just look at your stack or your tailpipe of an emissions truck versus a non-emissions truck or a deleted truck, you can really see the difference. I mean, the stack on a truck with emissions is going to be clear, or it might have a slight buildup of a white powder from the SCR. But it is a huge difference, 100,000 elephants difference, to be quite honest. But if you have a question about your DPF system, you know what to do. Text us, call us, 404-999-1361. Okay, on to question number 7. And then I'm going to check to see if any questions have come in from the live here. I don't want to miss any of you guys. Okay, so hang tight. What do you have for number 7 here? And Jeet Tumultani. Excuse me. How much is it to clean an EGR cooler for a DD15? That's a Detroit engine, probably on a Freightliner. Now, again, this number may change in the future, but right now, cleaning an EGR cooler is just half the battle. You need to test it for leaks as well. We do both. We leak test every EGR cooler before and after cleaning it, and if there are any leaks, there's no charge at all, so could be 0. But we can get your EGR cooler cleaned for about $220 once it's off the truck. And, you know, while sometimes we can turn them around the same day, we like to have them overnight to do the entire process, which includes a dry out process, which keeps any of the water that we use out. You know, we basically make sure that the EGR cooler is completely dry inside. That prevents, you know, even the small amounts of water that might be left from getting into your engine. So $220, and we can clean EGR coolers basically off of anything, almost anything. We haven't found anything we couldn't clean. And we also do the EGR valves as well. If you have a question about your EGR, guess what? Text us, call us, 404-999-1361, and we are here to help. All right, getting to the tail end of things here. We got question number 8. Question number 8 from Zal Mazadran from TikTok. Usually, how many miles should we clean our truck with one box, especially Volvo truck, please? I should probably edit these a little bit, but I just got to copy and paste it, but you get the idea. He's asking, he said, hey, I've got a Volvo. It's a newer Volvo that has the kind of one box assembly where the SCR and the DOC are in a box, and then you simply can pull the DPF out kind of like a cork. It's one of the easier systems to disassemble. And so what do I say to him? I say, I love the Volvo and Mack emission system. So in my opinion, that the Volvo and Mack emission system, even the older ones, are some of the most reliable on the road by far. They're all pretty good, but man, this one is bulletproof. But the problem with the Volvo and Mack DPF system is that it's almost too reliable. And people sort of forget it's there until the truck derates after too many regens. So what does my industry say? Like most industries, like the shampoo industry with the rinse, lather, repeat, they just do that so you use twice as much shampoo. My industry, the DPF cleaning industry, says every 150,000 miles is when you should get it done. And there's some statistical information from engineering that says that that's not a bad idea. And there's no harm in getting your DPF cleaned every 150,000 miles, but it's an expense that you may not need to invest. So that's not, so the 150,000 mile number is not entirely true in my opinion. It can be true depending upon use case and, type of engine and whatnot. But in the case of your Volvo, I would say get it done at 500,000 miles ish. And yeah, that thing can probably go 700,000 plus. But the problem is with the Volvos and Macks is that they just chug and chug and chug and chug and chug. And then all of a sudden, they derate on you and you're like, shit. It's not a big deal if this happens, doesn't damage anything, but you know how it is with your truck breaking down, or getting a flat or whatever it might be. It doesn't happen. It never happens at the most convenient time. So if you've got a Volvo like this and it's got more than 500,000 miles, I would say get it cleaned and you'll be good for another 500,000 miles. Push it to 600,000 if you want, 650, 700. I mean, you're kind of getting up there, but get it done before it asks for its first parked regen, because like I said, when these guys go, they go fast and they will just chug and chug and chug. And then all of a sudden, when it does become full of ash, usually because these trucks regen really well, it'll finally poop out on you and it's time to get it cleaned. The Volvos and Macks also have a pressure differential sensor, which is about, this big. It's got a couple tubes coming off of it. And as expensive as Volvo parts can be, this pressure differential sensor is actually strangely affordable. It's like $75. In fact, the new hoses that you need to get for it cost more than the sensor, so you probably spend, 150, $200. That sensor is pretty good, but we recommend replacing it as kind of a maintenance item when you get your DPF clean. So I'd recommend getting that done as well. We do stock them and can take care of all of this. So if you do have a Volvo or a Mac and you want us to help you out, give us a text or a call, 404-999-1361, and let us see what we can do to help you out. All right, on to question number 9. From Jumping OG. So this is another one that's just like kind of a setup one, which is they're going, they'll be like, DEF is bad for the environment and everything else. So he's asking a question. So what is the long-term effect of burning fertilizer? And he's just meaning, consuming DEF. And the answer is there are no long-term effects other than the fact that DEF and fertilizer do come from the same factory. And the truth is, because there's more competition for the product, that it's used in the fields by the farmers to grow food, and it's used by the diesel industry for their emissions. And guess what? Higher demand drives up prices for both, and that could be considered an unfortunate situation with, DEF. But the fact is that when DEF catalyzes your NOx, the urea ends up being catalyzed into nothing more than, believe it or not, water, H2O, and nitrogen. And that's, yes, I mean water like the water that you drink, and nitrogen, which is 80% of the air you breathe, or like 78%, let's just say 80%. And then what's a typical response to this response? Let's say, but I'm behind my truck and it stinks like piss and I smell ammonia and blah, blah, blah. That means your shit's broke. That means something's not right. If you smell ammonia while you're doing a regen, especially if it's really strong, once in a while, kind of as things heat up and as processes start, you might get a little whiff of ammonia. But if you're really making your eyes burn, there's something wrong with your system, probably something minor, but it's pumping too much DEF in there and it's not completely breaking it down into the nitrogen and water. So that's all I have to say about that. There is no long-term impact of burning fertilizer, as you call it. All that comes off the tailpipe, other than CO2, which comes off of all combustion engines, regardless if it's gas or diesel, is going to be nitrogen and water. That's it. And if you see anything else or smell anything else, that's indication that something's not right. It needs to be looked at. As an aside, yes, the plastic jugs for DEF, are a nuisance, and the boxes they're in and everything else, and the fuel it takes to move those jugs around. That's why I tell people, use bulk DEF whenever you can. Get your DEF from the pump. Make sure you've got a DEF refractometer to make sure the DEF you're putting in is good, and avoid using the 2.5 gallons of DEF if you can, if you are that concerned about the environment. All right, last question, number 10. This is another good one. So this is from Anthony YM19 from TikTok. Genuine question, he says. Why is it greener to convert carbon coming out of the exhaust to NOx? Isn't our atmosphere high enough in nitrogen as it is? I'd like your opinion. No hate, just curious. So he's challenging me politely, which I absolutely love and appreciate. Thank you for that. But if you develop a better understanding about this, and I'd be happy to tell you all about it, guess what? Text or call us, 404-999-1361, or check out our YouTube channel. So nothing converts carbon into NOx, at least not directly. NOx, or nitrogen oxides, are nasty, invisible gases that cause a lot of air pollution, and definitely just cause smog. I remember flying into Los Angeles prior to emissions, and the air was yellow. It was smog. Now you fly into Los Angeles, it's totally different. And so it causes smog, breaks down the ozone layer, and more importantly, in a local standpoint, NOx is a #1 cause of asthma, and believe it or not, more serious stuff like heart attacks. I mean, like, it's just nasty for those. And again, this happens. It's not going to happen if you walk past a non-emissions truck, but if you're regularly exposed to it, it can kill you. And that especially goes down to people that spend many hours living and sleeping around hundreds of idling trucks. And guess what that is? That's truck drivers. And studies have shown that serious health effects of truck drivers with long-term exposure to NOx and also the soot. And more recent surveys, post-emissions, have shown that these health effects have been substantially reduced since the diesel emissions have been introduced, and that's a big deal. And NOx and soot are two separate things, and they have two very different systems in the diesel emission system to reduce or eliminate them. NOx, nitrogen oxides, just is a byproduct of combustion, and it's the NOx is what's broken down by the SCR, the secondary or selective catalytic reducer. And the SCR is what works with your DEF. It takes the NOx, and to get real, specific and granular about it, it will turn the NOx into ammonia and then immediately break the ammonia down into its core components of water and nitrogen. And that's all that leaves the tailpipe. And again, if you smell ammonia behind your truck, it means that part of your SCR is not functioning properly. It's just an indication that you have a problem that needs to be addressed. The soot is captured by the DPF. The soot is carbon, unburned fuel, oil ash, etc. And guess what? That's captured, and 98% of it is burned by the DPF during a regen. Now, again, burning this unburned hydrocarbon, burning the soot, it'll turn it into a little bit of ash, and the remainder is a gas. That gas contains NOx, and that is also catalyzed by the SCR. So yes, there's kind of a turn soot into NOx, but that's just because you're doing a secondary burn on the unburned diesel fuel that's part of the soot. So if you or anybody else has questions on your DPF system, call or text us, 404-999-1361. We're here to help you out. And before I say goodbye for the evening, I'm going to quick check to see if I have any chats that came in. And I do. Super cool. Christopher Taylor, I tell you, if you're watching right now, you are one smart feller, and I consider you a good friend, and I'm lucky to know you. God bless you. Okay, so hang on a second. I'm gonna show this one here. This is a good one from the Talent off of YouTube. Thank you so much for asking me. I hope you're still watching the Talent. He says, I'm looking at a 2016 International 8600 with a Navistar N13 and 600,000 miles. What do you think about these motors? You know what? I don't want to answer that because I'm afraid I might steer you in the wrong direction. However, if you'd be so kind, the Talent, if you'd be so kind as to text me at 404-999-1361, 404-999-1361, and just say, hey, I've got that question. What I promise to do tomorrow is run this one past James, the other James, who's the mechanic that does all the removes and reinstalls of the DPFs. And he's got about 30 years of experience doing diesel work. And I can ask him about that 2016 with the Navistar N13 to make sure that you're making a good choice and not getting yourself into a pickle, or at least tell you what to look for. So please, the Talent, if you're still watching, I hope you are, drop me a text. Send me a text tonight. That's fine. We'll start the conversation tonight, and I might even catch James tonight and just ask him flat out, what do you think about that International? He may tell you to kind of avoid it and or go for it. Kind of depends on what the price is, what the problems are. But we might be able to save you from making a bad decision or help you make a good decision. So there you have it. Your questions. Thank you so much for all your questions. My answers. Hope you enjoyed them. Thank you, everybody, for watching either now or in the future. Please leave your questions and comments below, or over here, over there, wherever they might be. Or you can text your questions to 404-999-1361. That's 404-999-1361. And I'll be back here next week. I already have my list of questions being developed. And please, you leave a question for me on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, or text it to us at the 404-999-1361 number, and I will make sure I answer them. And don't forget, subscribe to the DPF Guys YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, and of course, find us on TikTok before we're canceled. And so anyway, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful week coming up. Have a great Christmas holiday with your family and anybody else you might be sharing time and celebration with. We will see you soon.
Haze, just clear skies ahead with DPF Guys. Your exhaust game's on tread. We got the tools, the skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF Guys, we got the fit so fine. Hit the road with confidence. Now the world